All right, before I start, I need to ask you something. Have you ever downloaded an old game from the internet just out of curiosity? Like one of those weird games nobody remembers, no developer, no website, just a random file somewhere on a forum. Because that's exactly what I did. And I swear to you, I wish I never clicked download. The strange part wasn't the graphics. It wasn't the sound. It wasn't even the fact that the game looked like it was made sometime in the early 2000s. The strange part was the map. But I'll get to that. This happened about a year ago. I was bored one night scrolling through an old gaming forum that mostly talks about abandoned games. Someone had posted a thread called Game That Was Never Finished, Don't Know Where It Came From. No screenshots. No explanation. Just a download link and a few comments from people saying things like, "This game feels weird. How does it know that?" And one comment that simply said, "Delete it." Of course, that just made me more curious. The file was tiny, only about 200 megabytes. The name was simple, home_map.exe. Yeah, that should have been my first red flag. But I downloaded it anyway. When I opened the game, it started instantly. No loading screen, no logo, just a black screen, and then a simple menu. There were only two options: Start and Exit. No settings, no music, no explanation. So obviously I clicked Start. The screen faded to black for a few seconds, and then suddenly I was standing in a hallway. The graphics looked old, like early PlayStation-style 3D. Low textures, slightly blurry walls, simple lighting. At first I thought it was just a random house. You know, like those indie horror games where you walk around and weird things happen. But after a few seconds, I noticed something strange. The hallway looked familiar. The layout felt almost identical to my apartment. But I brushed it off. I mean, most apartments look similar, right? Long hallway. Rooms on each side. Nothing special. Still, I kept walking. At the end of the hallway in the game, there was a door slightly open. I moved closer. Inside was a small room with a desk, a computer, and a chair. And that's when my stomach dropped, because the desk in the game looked exactly like mine. Same color. Same scratches on the corner. Even the same messy pile of notebooks. I actually leaned back from my screen and looked over at my real desk. Then back at the game. Then back at my desk again. It had to be a coincidence, right? I walked around the room in the game. There was a window on the left side, a shelf on the right, and a coffee mug sitting on the desk. A black mug, with a small crack on the side. I slowly turned my head toward my real desk. And there it was. The exact same mug. Same crack. Same spot. At that moment, I felt something cold run down my spine. But the worst part? That mug. I bought it yesterday. And that's when I started realizing this game wasn't showing a random house. It was showing my home. For a few seconds, I just sat there staring at the screen. My brain was trying to come up with any normal explanation. Maybe the game just used very generic assets. Maybe thousands of people have the same kind of desk, same black mug, same shelf. But the longer I looked, the harder it became to believe that. I slowly moved the character closer to the desk in the game. The camera zoomed in a little, and that's when I noticed something that made my stomach twist. There was a small scratch on the desk, right near the edge. Not a random texture, not part of the design, a very specific scratch. A long, thin line with a tiny curve at the end. The exact same scratch that happened when I dropped my keys there a few months ago. I actually stood up and walked over to my real desk. I ran my finger over the scratch. Then I looked back at the monitor. Same shape. Same spot. Same everything. I started laughing a little. Not because it was funny, but because my brain didn't know what else to do. "Okay, very funny," I said out loud. Like someone was watching. Like someone made this game as a joke. But there was no way anyone could have known what my apartment looked like. I live alone. I barely have friends over. And I definitely never posted pictures of my place online. Still, I kept playing. I don't know why. Curiosity, maybe. Or maybe I just wanted to prove to myself it was fake. I walked out of the room in the game and back into the hallway. Then I noticed something strange about the mini-map in the corner of the screen. I hadn't paid attention to it before, but now I saw it clearly. It wasn't a random map. It was a top-down layout of the apartment. Rooms, hallway, bathroom, kitchen, living room, everything. And the longer I stared at it, the more uncomfortable I felt. Because the shape of the map looked exactly like my apartment layout. I opened the door to the next room in the game, the kitchen. Inside the game kitchen, there was a fridge, a small table, 2 chairs, and a microwave on the counter. My real kitchen has the exact same setup, same layout, same positions. But then I saw something that made my chest tighten. On the table in the game, there was a pizza box, closed. I slowly turned my head toward my real kitchen. The door from my room was open so I could see part of it. And sitting on my table was the same pizza box. From dinner, the same brand, same color, same size. I stood there staring at it. Then I looked back at the game. The character was still standing in the kitchen. The pizza box was there, exactly where it should be. My heart started beating faster. Okay, this isn't funny anymore, I muttered, but I still didn't close the game. Instead, I walked deeper into the kitchen. When my character got closer to the table, the camera shifted slightly. And suddenly, the pizza box in the game opened by itself. Slowly. Inside were 3 slices. Pepperoni. I froze. Because earlier that night, I ate 5 slices, which means 3 were left. Exactly like in the game. I stared at the screen for a long moment, and then I realized something else. Something much worse. The minimap in the corner was still updating, and a small blinking dot showed where the player was. But there was another dot too, a second one, and it wasn't in the kitchen. It was in my bedroom, right behind me. For a second, I didn't move. My eyes were locked on the minimap in the corner of the screen. 2 dots. One was me, the player, standing in the kitchen. And the second one was in the bedroom, right where my real computer desk was, right where I was sitting. My brain immediately tried to explain it. Okay, maybe it's an NPC. Maybe the game just had some kind of character walking around the house. That would make sense, right? But the problem was, I hadn't seen anyone in the game yet. The house was completely empty. No footsteps. No voices. No sounds at all. Just silence. Still, the second dot on the minimap stayed there, not moving. Just blinking slowly. Exactly where my bedroom should be. Exactly where I was. I leaned a little closer to the screen. My heart was beating way faster now. Okay, this is weird, I whispered. But curiosity got the better of me again. I moved the character out of the kitchen and into the hallway. The camera followed slowly behind. The hallway in the game looked darker now. I don't know if it actually changed, or if I was just imagining things, but it definitely felt different. At the end of the hallway was the door to the bedroom. My bedroom, the same room I was sitting in. In real life, the door behind me was half open. I slowly looked over my shoulder. Nothing. Just the dark hallway of my apartment. Quiet. Still. Then I looked back at the game. The character was now standing right in front of the bedroom door. The minimap showed both dots very close to each other now. Mine and the other one. My hand was on the mouse. But suddenly, I didn't feel like opening that door anymore. Something about it felt wrong. Like the game wanted me to do it. Like it was waiting for me. I laughed nervously. Dude, it's just a game, I said out loud. But even saying that didn't make me feel better. I hovered the cursor forward. The character in the game reached for the door. And slowly, the door opened. Inside the room was my bedroom. Exactly like the real one. Same bed, same shelves, same posters on the wall, Same messy pile of clothes near the chair. Even the small lamp next to the bed was there. Everything. Perfectly accurate. But one thing was different. On the computer desk in the game, there was a computer monitor, and it was turned on. My character slowly walked closer. The closer I got, the clearer the screen became. At first, it looked like static. Then shapes started forming. Then colors. And suddenly, I realized what I was looking at. It was my screen. The game monitor inside the game was showing the exact same game. Like a mirror. Game inside a game. Inside a game. Each one showing the same hallway. Same room. Same monitor. Over and over. Infinite. My stomach dropped. Because inside that tiny screen, I could see something moving behind the character. Something standing in the room. Something tall. Something dark. And slowly, the character in the tiny screen started turning around, like it was about to show what was standing behind him. And without thinking, I turned around in real life, to look behind me, but my room was empty. At least, that's what I thought, until I heard something, very quiet, very close, a sound coming from my hallway. A single footstep. The footstep was quiet, but in the silence of my apartment, it sounded way too loud. I froze in my chair. For a few seconds, I didn't even breathe. Maybe I imagined it. Old buildings make noises all the time, right? Pipes, neighbors, wood cracking, it could have been anything. That's what I told myself. But then, I heard it again. Step. Slow, heavy, coming from the hallway. The same hallway that was behind me. The same hallway that the game had just shown. My eyes slowly moved back to the monitor. The character in the game was still standing in my bedroom, looking at the computer monitor on the desk. And inside that screen, inside the infinite mirror of games, I could still see that dark shape behind the character. It looked tall. Too tall, actually. Its head almost touched the ceiling. But the image inside the tiny screen was blurry, like the game didn't want to show it clearly. Another step echoed through my apartment. Closer this time. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Okay, that's probably the neighbor upstairs, I whispered to myself. But deep down I knew that wasn't true. My neighbors upstairs were an old couple, and they definitely weren't walking around at 2:30 in the morning. I looked back at the mini-map. 2 dots were still there. But something had changed. The second dot was no longer in the bedroom. It had moved. Slowly. Now it was in the hallway, between the bedroom and the kitchen, exactly where the sound of footsteps had come from. A cold wave of panic ran through my body. Nope, I muttered. Absolutely not. My hand reached for the keyboard. I tried pressing ESC to pause the game. Nothing happened. I pressed it again. Still nothing. No pause menu. No settings. Just the game. Running normally. And the 2 dots on the map. My character and the other one. Then another sound came from the hallway. But this time, it wasn't a footstep. It was something else. Something slower, like fingers dragging across the wall. A soft scratching sound. I slowly turned my head toward the real hallway behind me. The light in the hallway was off. Just darkness. My bedroom door was still half open. From where I sat, I could only see a small piece of the corridor. Nothing moved. Nothing stood there. But the scratching sound continued for a few seconds. Then it stopped. My attention snapped back to the screen. The mini-map showed the second dot moving again. Closer. Now it was right outside the bedroom door. I stared at the game, then slowly turned my eyes toward my real door. Still nothing. Just darkness. I swallowed hard. Okay, if this is some kind of prank, it's not funny. My voice sounded weak, almost like I didn't believe my own words. Back in the game. My character was still standing in the bedroom, facing the computer monitor. But then suddenly, the character started turning. I wasn't touching the mouse. I wasn't pressing any keys. But the character slowly rotated toward the door, like the game was taking control. The camera pointed directly at the bedroom doorway. In the game hallway, there was something standing there now. A tall, dark figure. Completely still. No face. No details. Just a silhouette. And at the exact same moment, from my real hallway, I heard something breathing. Slow. Deep. Right outside my door. The breathing lasted only a few seconds. Slow. Heavy. Like someone standing right outside my door trying not to make noise. Then it stopped. Complete silence filled the apartment again. I didn't move. I didn't even dare to look directly at the doorway. Instead, my eyes slowly drifted back to the screen. In the game, the dark figure was still standing in the hallway, right in front of the bedroom door. Completely motionless. It didn't walk. It didn't twitch. It just stood there, watching. Or at least, it felt like it was watching. The weirdest part was the shape. It looked human, but something about the proportions was wrong. The arms were too long, the head slightly tilted, and its shoulders were almost touching the top of the doorway, like the model had been stretched. My mouse cursor trembled slightly as my hand shook. I tried moving my character backward. This time the controls worked. The character slowly stepped away from the door. One step, then another. The figure in the hallway didn't move. It just stood there, half hidden by the darkness. I looked at the minimap again. 2 dots. Mine inside the bedroom. And the other one, right outside. Not moving. Not blinking anymore. Just sitting there. Like it was waiting. My throat felt dry. Okay, I'm closing this, I muttered. I moved the mouse to the corner of the screen and tried to close the window. Nothing happened. The game wasn't in window mode. Alt plus F4. Nothing. Control plus Alt plus Delete. Still nothing. The game stayed open. Running. Silent. Then suddenly, something changed. The figure in the hallway moved. Not walking. Not stepping. It just slid forward slightly, like someone dragging a model across the floor. And now part of its body entered the bedroom. Just a little. Enough for the light from my in-game lamp to hit it. And that's when I saw something that made my stomach drop. It didn't have a face. Where the face should have been, there was just a flat surface, like a mannequin or a mask without features. But right in the center of that blank face, there was a small, dark circle, like a hole or an eye. I leaned closer to the screen without realizing it, my brain trying to understand what I was seeing. Then the circle on its face suddenly moved. Not the head, not the body, just the circle. It slowly shifted and pointed directly at the character. Then slowly, very slowly, the camera in the game turned. Again, I wasn't touching the mouse. The character rotated until the screen showed the computer monitor on the desk, the same monitor that showed the infinite game loop. But something inside that loop had changed. In every smaller screen inside the monitor, the dark figure was now standing behind the character, closer in each layer, closer and closer, until, in the smallest screen, it was standing right behind him. And at that exact moment, I felt something strange in real life, a faint movement of air, right behind my neck, like someone had just stepped closer, close enough to breathe on me. The air behind my neck felt warm, not like a breeze from a window, not like the fan from my computer. It felt like someone breathing, slow, quiet, right behind me. My entire body went completely stiff. Every instinct in my brain screamed at me to turn around. But at the same time, something deep inside me said, don't. If I turned around, I might see something I couldn't explain. Or worse, something that shouldn't exist. So instead, I just stared at the screen. The character in the game was still standing in the bedroom, facing the monitor. But now the dark figure was inside the room, completely inside. It had crossed the doorway. Its long arms hung almost to its knees, and its head was tilted slightly to one side, like it was curious. The blank face with that small dark circle was pointed straight at the character, and slowly, the figure took a step forward. This time, it didn't slide. It walked. One slow step. The sound in the game was almost silent. But I could swear I heard the same step in my apartment. Behind me. My breathing became shallow. I didn't want to move. Didn't want to blink. Didn't want to do anything that might make whatever was behind me react. On the screen, the character suddenly moved again. Without my control, he slowly turned around. The camera rotated until it faced the figure directly. Now the thing was only a few feet away from the character. And for the first time, I noticed something else about it. Its body wasn't solid. The edges flickered slightly, like a broken texture in a video game. Parts of it would disappear for a split second, then reappear again. Almost like the game couldn't fully render it. The dark circle on its face widened slightly. Or maybe it was opening, like a mouth, or an eye adjusting. Then suddenly, text appeared at the bottom of the screen. White letters. Simple, like old games used to display dialogue. It said, "You see me now." I swallowed hard. A second line appeared. "Turn around." My heart started pounding again. Because the message clearly wasn't meant for the character in the game. It was meant for me. I shook my head slowly. "No," I whispered. The character on the screen remained frozen. The figure didn't move. But another line appeared. "It's rude not to look." My hands were shaking now. I forced myself to stare only at the monitor, ignoring the feeling behind my back, ignoring the warm air near my neck, ignoring the growing sensation that something tall was standing just inches away from me. Then the text changed again. This time it said, "Okay." A pause. Then another line appeared. "I'll look instead." The screen suddenly went black. For a split second, I thought the game had crashed. But then the image returned. Only this time, the camera angle had changed. The game was no longer showing the character. It was showing something else. A first-person view, from the perspective of the figure. And the thing it was looking at was the character sitting at the computer desk, watching the screen, exactly like I was. Then the character in the game slowly turned his head and looked directly into the camera, into the eyes of the thing. And in a quiet voice, using my voice, he said, "Don't turn around." When the character on the screen spoke with my voice, my brain just stopped for a moment. It felt like reality had glitched. Like two different things were happening at the same time, and my mind couldn't process it. I stared at the screen, barely breathing. The character in the game was sitting exactly like me, at the desk, looking at the monitor. Same posture, same slight lean forward, same position of the hands on the keyboard. It looked less like a character now, and more like a recording of me. Except I had never recorded anything like this. Then the character slowly blinked, and I realized something horrifying. The game wasn't controlling him anymore. He was moving naturally, like a real person, like me, but a version of me inside the game. The camera, still from the creature's perspective, stood behind him, watching, breathing slowly. The same slow breathing I could still feel behind my neck. Then the character spoke again, quiet, calm, still with my voice. "Don't move." I swallowed hard. My throat felt tight. The character leaned a little closer to the monitor inside the game, like he was trying to see me better. Then he said something that made my chest tighten instantly. "It's still behind you, for the first time since all of this started." I almost turned around. My shoulders twitched slightly, but I stopped myself. I didn't want to see it. Whatever it was. The character inside the game seemed to notice my hesitation. He nodded slightly, like he understood. "Yeah, I wouldn't look either," he said quietly. Then his eyes slowly shifted upward, looking at something above the camera, above the creature's point of view. His expression changed. The calm look disappeared. Now he looked nervous, really nervous. He leaned closer to the screen and whispered, "It's getting closer." At that exact moment, I felt something brush lightly against the back of my chair, very softly, like fingers sliding across the fabric. My heart slammed against my chest. I clenched my fists, still refusing to turn around. On the screen, the creature's camera moved slightly, just a tiny step forward. Now the character was closer, close enough that I could see details in his face. My face. But something about it was wrong. The eyes looked tired, dark circles under them, like he hadn't slept in days. Then he spoke again, this time more urgently. "Listen to me," he said. "You need to close the game." I almost laughed. "I've tried," I whispered back at the screen, even though I knew he probably couldn't hear me. But the character suddenly reacted. His eyes widened slightly, like he did hear me. And slowly, very slowly, he shook his head. "That's not how you close it," he said. My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" I whispered. The character leaned even closer to the monitor, his face filling most of the screen now. Then he quietly said something that made my blood run cold. "You don't close the game." A pause. Behind me, the breathing got deeper, closer, and then the character finished the sentence. "You close the door." My eyes slowly moved toward my real bedroom door, still half open, still dark beyond it. Then the character whispered one final thing, and this time his voice sounded terrified. "Before it comes inside." For a moment, I didn't understand what he meant. "Close the door?" My eyes slowly moved from the monitor to the real bedroom door. It was still half open. The hallway outside was completely dark, and the breathing behind me had stopped. That silence felt even worse, because now I had no idea where it was. I looked back at the screen. Inside the game, the character, the version of me, was still sitting at the desk. But now he was looking at the doorway behind him, just like I was about to do in real life. His face was pale, his eyes wide, and then he whispered, "You don't have much time." My heart started racing again. "What happens if I don't?" I muttered under my breath. The character slowly looked back at the monitor, at me. For a few seconds, he didn't say anything. Then he answered quietly, "It gets inside." That was enough for me. I pushed my chair back quickly and stood up. The sudden movement made my legs feel weak. For a second, I thought I might fall. But I forced myself to move. One step toward the door, then another. Behind me, the computer screen still glowed in the dark room. The game still running, still watching. When I got close to the door, I stopped. My hand hovered in the air. Something about the darkness in the hallway felt wrong, like the darkness itself was alive, watching me, waiting. I slowly leaned forward and looked into the hallway. Nothing, just the empty corridor. The same one I walk through every day. The same walls, the same floor. But now it felt completely different. The air felt colder, heavier, and the silence felt thick. Then I heard something, very faint, from the other side of the hallway. A quiet, dragging sound, like something long sliding slowly across the floor. My hand instantly grabbed the door handle. I pulled the door toward me quickly. The hinges creaked loudly in the silence. And just before the door closed completely, I saw something move in the darkness. Something tall. Too tall. A shape bending slightly like it was trying to enter the hallway. I slammed the door shut. Bang! Then I locked it immediately, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped the lock. For a few seconds I just stood there, staring at the door, waiting for something to push from the other side, waiting for scratching, knocking, anything. But nothing happened. Just silence again. Slowly, I turned around. The blue glow from my computer monitor lit the room. The game was still on. And the character inside the game was now standing. He was looking directly at the bedroom door. the same door I had just closed. Then he slowly turned toward the screen again, toward me, and for the first time since this started, he smiled. But it wasn't a relieved smile. It was something else, something uneasy, because then he said something that made my stomach drop. Good. A short pause. Then he added quietly, "Now it's trapped in the hallway." I frowned. "What do you mean, trapped?" I whispered. The character tilted his head slightly, and his smile slowly disappeared. Then he said something that made my heart start pounding all over again. Because now, he looked at the door again. It can't leave. And right on cue, something slammed into the other side of the door. The slam made the entire apartment shake. I jumped back, heart hammering like it was trying to escape my chest. The door handle rattled violently, like something was trying to open it from the other side. My hands were shaking uncontrollably, but I clutched the doorknob anyway, ready to pull it open if I had to. But I didn't. Because I remembered what the character said. It can't leave. A cold wave of fear washed over me. I slowly looked at the screen. Inside the game, the character, my double, was still standing at the desk, looking toward the bedroom door. The dark figure in the hallway had stopped moving. It was frozen. Or trapped. I couldn't tell. The character then slowly turned toward the monitor again. The infinite reflection of monitors inside monitors glowed faintly. And then it leaned toward the camera, whispered something, so quietly that I had to lean closer to hear. "It's watching us." My stomach dropped. Then, slowly, I realized the breathing behind me had stopped. Not because it left, but because it was holding its breath. Waiting. I stayed frozen for a long moment, just staring at the monitor. Then the text appeared again on the bottom of the screen. White letters, simple, cruel. "Look closer." I hesitated. My hand shook over the mouse, but I couldn't move. The character inside the game took a slow step closer to the edge of the desk, and for the first time, I noticed something horrifying. The figure in the hallway inside the game was no longer just a dark silhouette. It had shapes now. Fingers. Long, thin, twisting fingers. The dark circle in the middle of its face had become two. Two empty eyes. It was staring directly at the character. And the character, my double, looked straight back. Then it whispered, using my voice, "I can feel it too." I froze. A shiver ran down my spine. Because that wasn't my voice. It was too precise. Exactly how I sounded right now. I slowly turned my head toward my bedroom door. It was locked, but I could see a faint shadow moving outside, against the gap under the door. Something tall, too tall to be normal. It was pressing against the door, trying to see me. And then the game blinked. The screen went blank for a second. Then white letters appeared. "Now it knows where you are," I gasped. And then the breathing started again. Right behind me. Only this time, it wasn't slow. It was faster. Closer. Coming from inside the room. I wanted to scream, but my throat went dry. I couldn't move. I could only stare at the screen. And the character inside it, he whispered in my voice again, "Don't turn around." And I knew, in that exact moment, that if I did, I wouldn't just see it. I'd be part of the game. Part of that infinite loop. Watching myself forever. I couldn't move. Every muscle in my body was frozen. The breathing behind me was heavy now, deliberate right next to my ear. I dared not turn around. The computer screen glowed faintly in front of me, illuminating the room in cold blue light. The game was still running, and inside it, the character, my double, was slowly stepping away from the desk. His eyes never left the bedroom door. Then, almost in a whisper, he said, "I can't stop it, only you can." My hands shook so badly I could barely move the mouse. But somehow, I forced myself to reach for the power button on the computer. I pressed it. Nothing. The monitor didn't turn off. The game didn't close. It just flickered. and the infinite reflection inside the game now showed something terrifying. Not just the figure, not just my double, but me, sitting there frozen, watching the monitor. And behind me, something was standing. Tall, dark, breathing, closer. I felt it. I felt the weight of it pressing into the back of my neck. Then, the character inside the game whispered again. "Close the door now." Instinct kicked in. I ripped the lock from the door, slamming it shut. The room went silent for a moment. Just me, the glow of the monitor, and my own shaking breath. And then, the screen flickered one last time. The figure in the hallway inside the game vanished. The mini-map showed only my dot. The infinite reflections on the monitor slowly faded. The character inside the game, my double, looked at me one final time and whispered in my own voice, "Next time, it won't wait." Then the screen went black. Completely. I sat there in silence for what felt like hours, every hair on my body standing on end, not daring to move, not daring to breathe too loudly. Eventually, I forced myself to stand, to step away from the desk. Every instinct screamed at me to leave the apartment, to never ever touch another old game. And when I looked back at the monitor one last time, there was nothing, just darkness. But I could still feel it, watching, waiting, right behind the door. And that is when I realized, some games don't just simulate reality. They find it. And if you're careless, they can find you. Did you enjoy this story? What would you do if you were in this situation? Let me know in the comments. Down arrow, skull. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow and brings more creepy stories like this straight to you. Bell.